There's something almost sacred about the kind of silence that hangs in the room when a 72-year-old man looks you in the eyes and whispers, "Doctor, is it wrong that I still want to be close to my wife?" His voice, barely louder than the hum of the air conditioner, carried years of doubt, shame, and a longing he wasn't sure he was allowed to feel anymore. In that moment, I saw not an old man, not a patient on a chart, but a human being craving connection, not just physically, but emotionally, spiritually, and deeply. And that moment, like so many others over my 3 decades in practice, is why this conversation matters more than most people realize. My name is Dr. Edward, and I've spent the last 30 years working with thousands of older adults, men and women alike, helping them rediscover their vitality, their emotional intimacy, and yes, their sexual health in the years most people assume those things begin to fade. I've sat beside women in their 60s who've quietly asked if they're too old to be touched again. I've listened to men in their 80s who feel as if their desires are foolish or inappropriate, simply because society has taught them that aging and intimacy don't belong in the same sentence. But I'm here today to tell you something different, something that most people, even many doctors, aren't saying out loud. You're not too old for intimacy. In fact, maintaining a healthy sexual connection later in life may be one of the most overlooked keys to emotional resilience, physical wellness, and even longevity. Let me take you back to one of the first couples I worked with early in my career. Harold was 67 and Ellen was 65. They had been married for over 40 years and had, as they put it, fallen into the rhythm of roommates. There was love. Yes, there was comfort. But gone were the stolen kisses, the lingering touch, the private laughter. When they came to me, it wasn't because something was wrong with their bodies. It was because something was missing from their bond. Harold had been recovering from a minor heart procedure, and Ellen, deeply caring, had taken over as his full-time caretaker. In doing so, she slowly stopped seeing herself as a woman who was desired, and he, as a man who could still be desirable. We didn't start with pills or protocols. We started with permission to want, permission to feel, permission to hope that something tender, even sensual, was still within reach. Over the months that followed, their story transformed, not just through physical reconnection, but through the rediscovery of what it meant to be emotionally seen. Ellen told me, with tears in her eyes, "It's not just about sex, Dr. Edward. It's about feeling alive again." And Harold said, "Every time we're close now, it reminds me I'm still here, that we're still us." That story is not rare. It is far more common than we talk about. The truth is, sexual intimacy in later life isn't about replicating what we had in our 20s. It's about cultivating connection on a deeper level. It's about choosing softness in a world that so often hardens with age. Our culture often treats senior sexuality like a punchline, or worse, a taboo. But I've seen firsthand how intimacy can strengthen the immune system, reduce depression, improve sleep, increase circulation, and reinforce the bonds that protect mental health. It's not simply about pleasure, it's about presence. So why do so many people lose touch with that part of themselves as they age? Sometimes it's because of physical discomfort, hormonal changes, chronic illness, or medications that interfere with desire. Other times, it's emotional baggage, grief from a lost partner, guilt from religious messages received long ago, or fear of judgment from family. But more often than not, it's simply a lack of conversation, a slow, quiet silencing of one's own needs out of fear they're no longer appropriate. That silence is what I've dedicated my career to breaking. If you're still watching this video, I want to say something directly to you. You are not broken. You are not past your prime. You are not foolish for wanting more from your life, your body, your relationships. In fact, the very fact that you still long for connection is evidence that you are still beautifully human and very much alive. In the next part, I'll share the first of several reasons why intimacy later in life isn't just nice to have. It's essential to your health and well-being. What you'll discover might surprise you. But before we continue, if this message is touching something inside you, if it reminds you of someone you care about, or if you simply believe more people should hear the truth about aging and intimacy, please consider sharing this video. You never know who might need to hear this today. Someone's healing might begin with your kindness. Shall we continue? There was a woman I once knew. Her name was Jeanette. She was 74 when she first came to see me, dressed in a pale lavender sweater, her hair swept neatly back, the kind of woman who carried her grief with grace. Her husband had passed 2 years earlier, and she told me that what she missed most was not the grand things, the vacations or anniversaries or even the conversations. It was the way he used to hold her hand while they watched TV. That simple gesture made her feel cherished. "Now," she said softly, "I sometimes wonder if I'll ever feel someone's warmth again. I don't even know if I'm allowed to miss that part." Jeanette's story illustrates something vital, something we forget too easily as we age. Intimacy is not just about the physical act. It's about the healing power of touch, the reaffirmation of worth, the anchoring presence of being close to another human being. Which brings me to the first, and perhaps most overlooked reason, why maintaining sexual intimacy matters deeply in our senior years. It helps preserve our emotional vitality, the kind that keeps the heart open, the mind hopeful, and the spirit deeply connected to life. Emotional vitality isn't a medical term you'll often hear. It's not measured in blood tests or captured in scans, but I promise you this, it is as real as your pulse. It's the energy that fuels joy, curiosity, laughter, playfulness, and as we age, life can slowly chip away at it. We retire, friends move away, family gets busy, bodies change, and somewhere in the quiet of those shifts, we begin to forget that we're not just alive, we're still meant to be living. Now here's the part most people don't realize. Maintaining physical intimacy, even in small ways, a caress, a kiss, laying together skin to skin, triggers the release of powerful brain chemicals like oxytocin, serotonin, and dopamine. These are not just feel-good hormones. They are the anchors of our emotional well-being. They lower stress, reduce anxiety, and foster deeper sleep. They help regulate our immune system and keep our blood pressure in check. In short, they remind the body that it is safe, that it is loved, that it still belongs somewhere. I once worked with a couple, Thomas and Maria, who had just celebrated their 50th wedding anniversary. They told me, somewhat shyly, that they had stopped being intimate nearly a decade earlier after Thomas had surgery. "We thought maybe it wasn't appropriate anymore," Maria admitted. But after some gentle encouragement and guidance, they decided to try again. Not in the way they did when they were young, but in a slower, more intentional way. I'll never forget what Maria told me during their follow-up. She said, "I didn't know how much I had missed the feeling of being wanted, not in a flashy way, but in that quiet way only he knows how to show me." That one moment brought tears to my eyes, not because it was rare, but because it was so beautifully human. The emotional closeness that comes from intimacy reminds us of who we are beneath the roles life assigns us. It reminds us that we are not just grandparents, not just patients, not just people living out our final chapters. We are still lovers, still partners, still deserving of delight and tenderness. And then let's not overlook this truth. Emotional connection through physical closeness can stave off loneliness. Loneliness, particularly in older adults, is not just an emotional ache, it is a health risk. Studies have shown that chronic loneliness is as damaging to our health as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Yes, you heard that right. Feeling disconnected, unseen, untouched. It erodes our sense of identity, and no pill, no surgery, no diet can substitute for the healing power of human contact. That's why I tell every patient who walks into my office, no matter their age, do not give up on your right to feel close, to be loved, to be touched. Intimacy is not a reward for youth. It is a right of being alive. If you're still watching, I want to invite you to sit with this question for a moment. When was the last time you felt truly seen? Not just noticed, but truly felt, held, cherished, embraced not for what you do, but for who you are. Because in the next part, we'll explore the second reason why intimacy in older age is far more than emotional. It's also deeply physical. We'll look at the incredible ways physical closeness supports your body's strength, your mobility, even your heart health. Yes, real, measurable effects. You'll see just how powerful something so human can be. But before we go there, if any part of this has resonated with you, if you're nodding quietly or thinking of someone who might need to hear this, please don't keep it to yourself. Share this video. Share the message. You may be giving someone permission to rediscover a part of themselves they thought was lost. We've only just begun. There's a story I've carried with me for years, and every time I tell it, it reminds me of the quiet wisdom the body holds. If only we listen. It was about a man named Richard, a former school principal, sharp as ever at 79. But he walked with a slow, deliberate gait, a cane always by his side. He came into my office complaining not just of stiffness and joint pain, but of something harder to define, feeling disconnected from himself. He didn't use those words exactly, but I could hear it in his pauses, his shifting glances, the way he spoke more about the past than the present, as I sat with him and his wife, Caroline. I gently asked a question that often takes people by surprise. When was the last time you two were physically close, really close? Caroline looked down. Richard let out a soft laugh, the kind that says, "It's been too long." What followed wasn't a prescription or a protocol, it was an invitation. A simple suggestion to try holding hands while falling asleep, to sit shoulder to shoulder during their evening tea. It started small, but something shifted. Over the next few months, I watched Richard become lighter in his presence. His voice had a spark again. He told me, half joking, half beaming, that his legs felt stronger. His balance improved. Caroline added, "It's like he's remembering how to be in his body again." And that's the second reason I urge older adults to maintain sexual intimacy, not just for their hearts, but for their bodies. You see, physical closeness, when safe and consensual, is not merely recreational, it is regenerative. It increases circulation, supports cardiovascular function, and even stimulates the release of hormones that maintain muscle tone and bone strength. It's exercise for the nervous system, a boost for the immune response, and a powerful reminder to the body that it is still worth tending to. One study showed that older adults who maintained regular physical affection, whether that's cuddling, kissing, or sexual activity, had lower rates of hypertension, fewer reports of chronic pain, and even better sleep patterns. Think about that. The very things we try to solve with medications and routines might also be helped, in part, by the simplest form of closeness. There's also something called proprioception, our body's awareness of space and motion. As we age, this sense can dull, but regular physical contact, including intimacy, helps maintain that vital connection between body and brain. It's as if each gentle touch whispers to the nervous system, "You're still here, you're still whole." That might sound poetic, but the science supports it. When we abandon intimacy, especially out of fear, shame, or a sense of growing too old, we are not just avoiding discomfort, we are cutting off a powerful source of vitality. The body doesn't forget how to connect. It waits patiently for permission, and once you give it that, it responds in beautiful ways. Blood pressure stabilizes, cortisol levels drop, endorphins rise, organs hum a little easier. Muscles soften and release their long-held tension. I remember one woman, Judith, 82, who had stopped engaging in any physical affection for over a decade after her late husband passed. Then, unexpectedly, she met someone, a widower named Paul. They started slowly, cautiously, like people learning to dance again after years of silence. When she came to see me a year into their relationship, her eyes sparkled. "Dr. Edward," she said, "I swear I sleep better. My arthritis even feels less angry." "Is that possible?" I smiled. "It's more than possible," I said. "It's the power of feeling alive in your own skin again." This isn't about pretending we're young. It's about recognizing that intimacy evolves. It slows down. It deepens. It becomes more about presence than performance. And in that presence, healing happens. So if you've ever wondered whether it's too late or whether your body still has room for tenderness, let me assure you, it's not, and it does. What the world calls aging, I've come to see as ripening, and ripened hearts deserve to be held too. If you've made it this far, maybe something in you is waking up, not in a jarring way, but like morning light through soft curtains. Maybe you're starting to remember the parts of you that once thrived in affection, that still long for warmth, for shared breath, for belonging. In the next part, we'll explore something equally important, how intimacy later in life isn't just about relationships with others, but about how it reconnects you with yourself. You'll see how rediscovering this part of your life can transform your confidence, your sense of identity, and even your relationship with aging itself. Before we go on, please consider sharing this video with someone who might need to hear it. You'd be surprised how many people quietly carry these questions, wondering if they're alone. Maybe you'll be the voice that reminds them they're not. We'll continue shortly. There's something deeply personal, almost spiritual, about what happens when someone who thought that part of their life was over suddenly feels alive again. I remember a woman named Doris. She was 76 when we met, vibrant in her smile, but hesitant in her voice. Her hands shook just slightly as she told me, "I've raised 4 children, buried my husband, retired from nursing, and now I don't know who I am anymore." That sentence echoed in me because I've heard it in some form from so many older adults over the years. And that's what I want to talk to you about now. This is the third reason why maintaining sexual intimacy later in life is so powerful. It's not just about connecting with another person, it's about reconnecting with yourself, with your sense of identity, your confidence, your feeling of still being you in a world that's constantly trying to define you by your age, your health, or your usefulness to others. After so many years of caregiving, working, parenting, enduring, many seniors arrive at a place where the mirrors don't quite reflect who they feel they are inside. They see wrinkles, and they think the world sees weakness. They see gray hair, and assume no one sees beauty anymore. But what if I told you that one of the most powerful mirrors you can hold up to yourself is the gaze of someone who truly sees you? Physical and emotional intimacy has a unique way of doing just that. It says, "You are still desired, you are still lovable, you are still whole." And when that reflection is offered gently, consistently, and without judgment, something remarkable happens. Your inner voice begins to soften. The shame that once whispered, "You're too old for this," grows quiet. The doubt that asked, "Am I still attractive?" gives way to a new, steadier truth. I am enough, exactly as I am. I recall Doris telling me, months after she'd begun dating again, "I finally wore lipstick for myself, not for him, for me." And that simple act of reclaiming her sense of femininity, of self-expression, meant the world. That's what intimacy can unlock. Not because someone else completes us, but because connection reminds us of the parts we forgot we had. The same is true for men. So many older men have come to me quietly burdened, not by a loss of desire, but by a fear that they're no longer capable of being the man they once were. Our culture often ties masculinity to performance, strength, and utility. But what I've witnessed in my practice and in my own life is that real strength, especially in later years, is about vulnerability, about honesty, about presence, a man who listens, who touches with intention, who expresses love without needing to impress. That man is not only capable, he is deeply needed. Sexual intimacy after 60, 70, 80, or even 90 is not a sign of immaturity or vanity. It is a quiet revolution against invisibility. It says, I am still here. I still matter. I still feel. And what's more, when you step back into your own skin with pride and gentleness, other parts of life begin to shift too. Your posture changes, your energy brightens, you engage more fully with your days. You take greater care of your body, not out of fear, but because you recognize its value. And no, it doesn't have to be all about intercourse or performance. It's about touch, about presence, about those small, almost sacred moments that remind us of our humanity. A warm back rub, a soft kiss on the shoulder, holding each other while the rain taps the windows. These are not just sentimental gestures, they are powerful rituals of self-remembrance. If you're still here with me, I want to gently ask, when was the last time you let yourself feel wanted, not just needed? When was the last time you honored the part of you that still desires closeness, not because it's productive, but because it's part of your soul's expression? In the next section, we'll talk about the fourth reason sexual intimacy matters so much in our later years, how it strengthens relationships, not just romantically, but emotionally, spiritually, and even socially. You'll learn how rekindled closeness can transform not just couples, but families, communities, and even your legacy. But before we turn that page, if anything in this message has stirred something in your heart, please don't keep it hidden. Share it with someone you love. You might just help them see themselves in a gentler, more loving light, because sometimes the most healing words are the ones that remind us we are not alone. Let's keep going. The most beautiful truths are often the ones we save for last. I once met a couple named Wallace and Ruth. They had been married for 56 years. When they came to see me, Wallace had recently recovered from a mild stroke, and Ruth was worn thin, not just by the responsibility of caregiving, but by the silence that had crept into their marriage. We still love each other, she told me, but I feel like we've lost something we can't name. Anwanda Wallace sat quietly, eyes lowered, then said, I don't want her to just take care of me. I want her to still see me as her husband. That moment, so simple and yet so full of longing, reminded me why intimacy matters, not only for health, not only for identity, but for the strength of relationships themselves. Which brings us to the fourth truth I want to share. Maintaining physical and emotional intimacy in older age doesn't just revive the body or restore the self, it heals the bond between two people. It turns routine into connection. It breathes life back into companionship. So many couples drift into what I call functional love. They live together. They support each other. They share meals and memories, but they stop touching. Stop looking into each other's eyes. Stop holding each other in silence. And over time, the partnership begins to feel more like a schedule than a sacred space. I've seen it countless times, and I've also seen how, when intimacy is gently invited back in, relationships begin to soften again. Walls begin to melt. The smallest gestures, a hand on the back, a whispered goodnight, a shared breath, become bridges back to closeness. It's not about fixing something that's broken. It's about remembering what's already there, buried beneath the routines of life. I've witnessed couples who hadn't kissed in years begin kissing again. I've watched tears fall from eyes that hadn't known touch in a decade. And the ripple effect? It's profound. Rekindled intimacy leads to gentler communication, more laughter, deeper patience, and those changes don't just stay within the bedroom or behind closed doors. They carry into the rest of life, into how we speak to our children, how we hold space for our grandchildren, how we move through the world with tenderness and grace. There's something else too, something that isn't always talked about. When seniors maintain their intimate lives, they also pass down a legacy. They show the next generation that love doesn't have an expiration date, that affection doesn't fade when the hair turns silver or the skin folds with time. I've had adult children of my patients tell me, I hope I have what my parents have when I'm their age. And that, to me, is one of the most beautiful gifts we can give. We teach not through lectures or advice, but through example, through living proof that connection can last, grow, and even deepen with time. Some of you might be thinking, but what if I'm alone? What if I no longer have a partner to share this with? I hear you. I've sat with that ache in many rooms, with many people, and while partnership may be one path to intimacy, it is not the only one. The kind of closeness we speak of here, the healing, nourishing kind, can take many forms. Sometimes it begins with self-touch, with the way you care for your own body. Sometimes it comes through friendship, through allowing someone else to truly see you. Sometimes it's spiritual, a closeness to the divine, to nature, to the quiet breath inside you that says, you are still lovable, still whole. But if you do have someone in your life, whether it's a spouse, a longtime partner, or someone new who makes your heart flutter even just a little, don't wait for the right moment. Don't assume the door to intimacy has closed. Sometimes all it takes is one small act of courage, a hand extended, a soft word spoken, a willingness to be vulnerable. Even just for a moment, if you're still watching, still feeling the rhythm of this message in your own heart, then I ask you to do one thing today: reach out, whether it's to a partner, a friend, or even to yourself. Let this not be a message you heard, but a truth you felt, a step you took, a shift you allowed. In our final part, we'll bring everything together. I'll share the most profound insight I've come to over 30 years of walking this road with older adults. It's something I wish every person over 60 could carry with them. Not just about intimacy, but about what it truly means to age with love, with dignity, and with joy. But before we continue, please, if this message has brought even a moment of reflection to your day, share it with someone you love, with someone who may be quietly wondering if they still matter. You may not realize how powerful your kindness can be. The last chapter is waiting. Let's go there together. There is a quiet moment at the end of nearly every appointment I've ever had with an older adult. A pause, a softening, a question that hovers in the air long after the charts are closed and the stethoscope is put away. It's not always spoken out loud, but I hear it nonetheless. Do I still matter? Is there still time for me to feel alive? After 30 years of walking beside thousands of seniors, listening to their stories, celebrating their milestones, sitting with their pain, I can tell you this: the most powerful medicine we have is not found in a bottle. It is found in connection, in the willingness to touch and be touched, to love and be loved, to feel fully, bravely, tenderly, even when the world tells you your season has passed. So here is the final and most important truth I want you to carry. Sexual intimacy is not about what your body can do, but about what your heart still wants to feel. Aging may change the terrain, but it does not end the journey. In fact, for many people, the later years are when intimacy finally becomes real, raw, honest, unrushed. It becomes less about performance and more about presence, less about youth and more about truth. I once visited a couple in hospice, Martha and Samuel, both in their late 80s. Samuel was in his final days, and I had come to check in on his comfort. But what I witnessed in that quiet room changed something in me forever. Martha sat by his side, stroking his forehead gently, humming the song they danced to on their wedding night. And when he opened his eyes, just briefly, and saw her, his lips moved in the softest whisper, "Still beautiful." In that moment, I saw the essence of intimacy, not as something physical alone, but as a language two souls share when words are no longer enough. That is what you deserve. That is what remains possible. And that is why I've made it my life's work to speak on this topic, even when others shy away, because we cannot afford to let silence win. We cannot let aging be equated with absence. We must remember and remind each other that vitality has no expiration date. You see, sexual health isn't just about sex. It's about being seen. It's about reclaiming ownership of your own body, your own pleasure, your own story. It's about choosing to say, I'm not done yet. I still want to be touched. I still want to touch. I still want to feel that spark, not for vanity, but for life. And if you've come with me this far, maybe you're beginning to see yourself differently now. Maybe you're ready to ask new questions. Not, am I too old? But what else is possible? Maybe you're ready to try, gently, slowly, on your terms, to open that door again. You are worthy of love. You are worthy of touch. You are worthy of intimacy, not as a reward, but as a birthright that never expired. If this message has touched your heart, please do one more thing for me. Share it, not because it's my voice, but because it may help someone else find their own. It may remind them that they, too, are still allowed to feel, to long, to reconnect. And if no one has told you this today, let me be the first. You are not too old. You are not forgotten. And you are most certainly not alone. I'm Dr. Edward. Thank you for allowing me to walk this part of your journey with you. Stay curious, stay open, stay soft where the world wants you to go hard, because in that softness lies the secret to everything you've been longing to feel. And remember, sometimes, the most intimate thing we can do is to simply say, I still care enough to try. Until next time.